How's it going, people? Welcome back to the channel. In the wake of that video I did a couple of weeks ago on the 2019 F1 Grid's drivers' first cars, I thought I'd do a video on a few legendary drivers and their first cars. So I've done a whole bunch of research and I found the first cars of 15 former F1 drivers that I think you'll be interested in hearing about. Before I can begin properly, I have to explain this. I have a moustache, and that is because I am supporting Movember. If you'd like to donate, and please do because I'm currently on £0, link in the description. It's a really good cause. It's for men's mental health, for prostate cancer, for testicular cancer, raising awareness and handling the issues. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, all that great stuff. But without further ado, let's get into the video. Where better to start than David Coulthard, a household name here in the UK. He was a Formula 1 driver between 1994 and 2008, driving for Williams, McLaren and Red Bull. You could argue the peak of his career was in 2001, where he finished runner-up in the World Drivers' Championship to Michael Schumacher. The Scotsman is still around in F1. He's done a bit of commentating, a bit of punditry here and there, and basically become an all-round personality within the sport. And when it comes to his first car, it's one that I really like, maybe one of the best ones on this list, the Renault 5 Turbo. After passing his test at 17, he started driving the family Mercedes 508D karting van, but his first actual car was that 5 Turbo. I'm not talking a 5 GT Turbo, I'm talking a 5 Turbo, just straight up one of the nicest hatchbacks to have ever come out of the French factory. 6.5 seconds in a car that weighs around 900 kilograms and has brake horsepower figures of 160 at 6,000 revs. There are some other really great cars in this list, but I think this one is a top spot for me. Next up we have another British Formula 1 driver, Jenson Button, who won the World Championship in 2009 with Brawn GP, one of the most incredible fairy tale stories of Formula 1 history. Now Jenson has an incredible car history. I'm talking an Enzo, a Bugatti Veyron, Porsche GT2 RS and a couple of other amazing cars. But his first car was the 1990 Vauxhall Cavalier with a 2-litre 8-valve engine. He bought it with £2,000 of his go-kart winnings, put some 17-inch rims on it, some suspension, some speakers, all that good stuff, and when he was finished it, he says it was a really good car to drive. He's literally done the dream, a 2-litre Vauxhall all the way up to an Enzo. Next up we have an incredible name within the sport, Fernando Alonso. Many hailed him as one of the greatest in the sport, having won 2 championships in 2005 and 2006 with Renault. Though many who are newer to the sport only know him for his tough time with McLaren over the last few years. And it would appear that his time with Renault started very early, as his first car was a Renault Megane in a sort of yellowish brown colour. It was given to him as a gift by a Formula 3 sponsor, and he said that he was very happy with it. At his age he just wanted a car and he was super happy to have that one. Apparently he didn't take very much care of it though, as it was only cleaned when it rained. Let's talk about one of the all-time greats now, AYRTON or AYRTON Senna. He was a 3-time world champion, but that really doesn't tell you how amazing he was at actually driving a car. His life was unfortunately cut short at the San Marino Grand Prix in 1994. I've seen a few stating that his first car was a Ford Escort XR3i, but I'm not really sure that's the case. I haven't been able to verify it. He certainly promoted the car, but that doesn't necessarily mean it was his first. I'm sure there'll be someone out there who can enlighten me on this. The first car he ever drove though at 7 years old was a Willys Jeep. Even though it was his father's Jeep, he was actually able to drive and shift the car within just a couple of attempts. That may have given some indication as to how he got so good at driving in the longer term. Next up we have Nigel Mansell, who won the Formula 1 World Championship in 1992 and the IndyCar World Series in 1993. Renowned for his moustache, he's the second most successful British Formula 1 driver of all time in terms of race wins, with 31 victories. Despite winning the World Championship in 1992, he actually got his first car in just 1989 for £80. It was a minivan. Apparently he spent a lot of time tinkering with the car and put a 1300cc twin-carb racing engine in it. In an interview he mentioned it was very quick and he absolutely loved dominating people in it because people would just never expect that out of a little minivan. Onto another legendary British driver now, Sir Jackie Stewart, who was active in F1 between 1965 and 1973. He drove for BRM, Matra, March and Tyrrell. He won 3 world titles and finished runner-up twice. This earned him the nickname the Flying Scot. By the age of 17, he'd saved up enough money in tips working at his father's garage to buy a new Austin A30. It was spruce green and had Stuart tartan seats. He says he was a proper poser when he was driving around in the car. Remembering that money was very slightly different back then, it cost him £375 to buy it. Onto a more recent Formula 1 world champion, and that is NICO Rosberg, who had an Audi RS6 as his first car. He won the World Championship in 2016 and then retired and started to do other things in his life, including YouTube. What's interesting about Nico is that both him and his father won Formula 1 World Championships, as Keke Rosberg won in 1982. Keke was actually the person that gave him the RS6, saying that it was a car that was very safe. Now, given Rosberg's age, I'm going to assume that was the C5, the first generation RS6. It means it had a 4.2 litre V8 engine, all-wheel drive, and did 0 to 60 in around 4.5 seconds. Keke has a really cool understanding of what safe is, at least in my opinion. Another well-known F1 driver is Mark Webber. He was in F1 between 2002 and 2013, driving for Minardi, Jaguar, Williams, and finally Red Bull. He never won any championships, he won only 9 races, but he had 215 starts in Formula 1 and is a well-known and well-liked individual within the sport. His first car was a 1969 Toyota Corolla Toyo Glide, which he bought off of his elder sister's best friend for £270. Apparently it was a 2-speed automatic, had bench seats with no seat belts, was bomb-proof, but also was the colour of snot. When I say the car was bomb-proof, apparently he got into an argument at school once and some guys set fire to the car, and though it didn't look very pretty afterwards, it still ran just as well as ever. And one thing that made me laugh is that apparently they kept a spare tyre in the back of the car which they called Angelina, and they would roll it down hills for fun. It really does sound like Mark has some great stories about that Toyota. Next up we have Brazilian driver Rubens Barrichello, who was in F1 from 1993 to 2011, driving for Jordan, Stewart, Ferrari, Honda, Braun and Williams. He was teammate to Michael Schumacher at Ferrari for quite some time. At 16 he was driving his dad's Volkswagen Gol, a popular car in Brazil that his dad had bought. And though he still likes the Gols apparently, the first actual car that he bought was a Vauxhall Calibra in 1992. Apparently he was invited to go to England, so rather than taking the plane he drove his car the 2,000 kilometers from Italy to England all by himself just for the fun of it. And having done a big driving trip around Europe myself, that's something I can definitely relate to. Barrichello's teammate and arguably one of the greatest drivers to ever sit in an F1 car, Michael Schumacher, also had a really cool first car. Currently the winningest driver of all time with 7 world titles and 91 wins. Michael is one of my childhood heroes and really one of the reasons why I even started watching F1 in the first place, so all I can really say right now is keep fighting Michael. I'm quite happy with the research that I've done to find out what Michael's first car was. In forums you'll see quite a few people talking about his first car being a Fiat 500, and generally people have just accepted that as the truth, but it's really not the case. In an article from the French Grand Prix in 2006, Michael clearly states that his first car was a Ford Capri 1600. And there's a really good episode of the Grand Tour on the Capri and I highly recommend you watch it. This car was an absolute icon in the UK during the 1970s, and it's super cool to hear that Michael had one as his first car. Interesting then that Michael's brother, Ralf Schumacher, didn't have quite as cool a first car, although in my opinion still a very solid one, a Volkswagen Golf. Ralf was in F1 from 1997 to 2007 driving for Jordan, Williams and Toyota, and he won 6 races in that time. It does seem a bit unfair that Michael got a Ford Capri as his first car and Ralf only got a Golf, but whatever. Juan Pablo Montoya was a teammate to Ralf at Williams, and in my opinion is one of the fastest people to have ever gotten into a Formula 1 car without achieving his full potential because of the politics of the sport. His lap record at Monza lasted from 2004 to 2018 when Kimi Raikkonen finally beat it. Despite being so fast, his first car was actually a Renault Clio. I'm going to assume that was an original Clio, so the Mark I produced between 1990 and 1998. This Clio was actually brought in to replace the Renault 5, and it does bear a very slight resemblance, at least to sort of the GT Turbo style Renault 5s. Alain Prost won the Formula 1 world title in 1985, 1986, 1989 and 1993. The Frenchman's clinical driving style brought him the nickname The Professor. He was a fierce rival to Senna and was also in the same team as him briefly. His clinical driving style was maybe not the case when he was driving his first car, as it was the only car that he crashed, ending up in a ditch whilst driving with friends. It was an Opel Kadett GT in yellow and black. It was a car that he had really wanted for quite a long time, and he bought it himself with the money that he had made racing. Just as a side note, I think it's really cool how many of these cars bought their first cars with money from karting or formulas or whatever. And Prost mentions the fact that he was really proud of being able to buy the car himself. The penultimate driver I wanted to talk to you about was Niki Lauda. The 3-time world champion who tragically died this year was renowned for his ability to set up a car and also his precision out on track. If you've seen the film Rush, you'll see an amazing season between him and James Hunt. It was also a very tough year for Lauda as he had his infamous crash at the Nürburgring where the car was caught in an inferno and he was stuck inside it. Niki came from quite a wealthy family, and before getting into F1 he bought himself a 1949 drop-head Volkswagen Coupe, a car that in future would become the Beetle. He bought the car for $100 and took it home to his family's place where there was enough land to drive it without a driver's license. He said that it was in this VW that he worked out how to control cars in extremes, and then his passion got bigger and bigger from then on. He would even look for places in the grounds where he could jump the car, and then finally one day the shock absorber came through the bodywork and the car was finished. He said that in this car he worked out that fear was never an issue for him when driving a car, and that's what got him into racing. The final driver I wanted to talk about was Jacques Villeneuve, the son of Gilles Villeneuve. Though he's a somewhat polarising character, he won the World Championship in 1997, which is very much to his credit. He drove for Williams, BAR, Renault, Sauber and BMW Sauber in a career that lasted from 1996 to 2006. His first car was a Peugeot 205 GTI, one of the coolest hot hatches of all time in my opinion, and a very decent first car to own. To this day, this car is still loved by historic rallying enthusiasts and often driven very hard at events. Very much fair play to Jacques. So I just ran you through 15 former F1 drivers' first cars. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, or let me know if I got anything wrong. Of course, this is all from internet research. If I got anything wrong, I do apologise. Don't forget to go to the link down below as well to donate for the Movember stuff. For those that aren't from the UK, I'll be growing this moustache all month. I actually didn't think I could even grow a moustache, and yet here it is on my face, and hopefully I'll like Nigel Mansell by the end of the month. That would be the goal. As always, a massive thank you to my patrons for all of their continued support. I really appreciate it. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, all that great stuff. But as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.